All right, so next up we have Jessica Vazquez, is a graduate of Oklahoma City University, where she was a Clara Luper Scholar and earned a degree in political science and philosophy. She is a Mexican immigrant and an alumni of the National Education for Women Leadership Institute. She's also on the board of Dream Action Oklahoma. Jessica works for the Oklahoma Policy Institute in Tulsa. Jessica, you're up next. There she is.
Hey, here I am. Thank you so much for having me. I just turned my video on. Really happy to be here just to share. Really honored to just be able to share the space with y'all and to be invited to share my experience and to talk a little bit about the work that I've been doing. So I'm here to talk specifically about DACA, which is a very small section of immigration. And two things before I really get into talking or to my spiel. I don't have a PowerPoint, but I would really love to take questions as you get them. A lot of things with immigration, they're like, I'll throw out words and just acronyms that maybe people don't, that I know right off the bat, but maybe people don't. So feel free to drop the questions, unmute yourself and chime in. Like I'd really like to take those questions as they come up and to address them as you get them. And it's not gonna throw me off at all. So feel free to chime in. But my other disclaimer, or my second thing, is a disclaimer, and that disclaimer is I'm not an attorney. I'm just a local advocate, activist, grew up undocumented, so I have a lot of experiences with the immigration system, but I'm not an attorney by any means. I'm not even a policy analyst. I do work at the Oklahoma Policy Institute, but I'm a communications associate, and I'm very proud that I'm not a policy wonk. My job is to communicate the wonkiness and the technical stuff to our audience. So that's kind of my two little disclaimers that I wanted to throw out there. And then before I really start, I want to define two terms off the bat. One of them is undocumented, which I'm sure a lot of us have heard. A lot of us have also heard the word illegal. We don't really use the word illegal or don't appreciate the word illegal because we don't believe that any human is illegal. People can be missing documentations, people can be missing, IDs or social security numbers, but no human being is illegal. So undocumented, unauthorized are two words that you'll hear. And then also a side note, it's not illegal to be in the United States without documentation. So like being in the United States without a social security number, you're literally not breaking any law except in Arizona. Again, I'm not an attorney, so this is just like my experience, just my advocacy work. But now that I've gone down that rabbit hole, undocumented, that's what undocumented means. And really mostly what that means is there isn't a social security number. I think a lot of people when they're born, they take that for granted that they have this 9-digit social security number that's attached to their identity, and it follows them forever. But if you're undocumented, you don't have that. And that really bars you from doing a lot of things, which I'll get into as I go through and explain my story. And then the other word is DACA, which I mentioned at the beginning. And DACA is an acronym for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. And you're probably more familiar with the term Dreamers. It's really popular in the headlines. People love to talk about the Dreamers, helping the Dreamers. And what Dreamers, I'll define that too while I'm at it, are immigrant youth who came to the United States when they were younger and are also undocumented. But for reasons I'm not going to get into today, they were kind of folded into the subsection of special people that, deserve special attention because they were brought here younger. So Dreamers, or people who came here a little bit younger, were eligible for DACA, which is a 2-year permit. And I'll get into that here in a bit as I'm explaining my story. The three things that I want to touch today is, one, I want to share my story of growing up undocumented before DACA, because DACA is relatively new. It came around in 2012. And then, so one, my origin story. Two, talk a little bit about the current state of DACA. If you've been following the news at all, I'm sure you've seen it's in the headlines pretty frequently, especially lately. And then the third thing I want to talk about is how all of this is impacting mental health and impacting our well-being and impacting how we're living just day to day. So again, feel free to drop any questions as you get them. If anything I say doesn't make sense, feel free to drop in and ask. So like I mentioned, I'm a Mika mentioned, I'm a Mexican immigrant. I was born in Nuevo Laredo, Tamaulipas, in Mexico. If any of y'all know Laredo, Texas, literally they're border towns. It's one big metro and the border divides them. And I was born on the Mexico side of the border. I was born in Mexico. And before even coming to the United States, my parents did make the attempt to do it the legal way and, get in line and apply. And we did apply, put a petition into USCIS. And long story short, USCIS told us that petition could take 20 to 30 years. They didn't really even give us a good deadline or good timeline for it. And what I can say about that petition is that we submitted it in 1999 and it's still in process right now. It's still pending. But when my parents got the news that this process was going to take that long, they had to make the difficult decision of migrating to the United States because they had young children who were growing up, young children being me and my little brother, who were growing up and who needed support, who needed opportunities. So they made the difficult decision for us to migrate to the United States, and we chose Oklahoma because we did have family here. And growing up undocumented, you don't really know, because when you're a little kid, you don't know about the immigration, the legal system, all of that doesn't make sense. But what I did know was that my family was different. It wasn't like other families that I saw that just were freer and, took trips and vacations and did small things like that I didn't have the liberty to. One small thing that I'll expand more on later on, but it really highlights just the fear that you have growing up undocumented that you don't really even talk about. But in kindergarten, there was a field trip, and we wanted to go to a baseball game. And everyone, obviously, their parents signed their field trip and they went, no problem. But my parents were really hesitant to sign my permission slip and to let me go. And I did not understand why. I could not understand why. And my teachers did not understand why. They were like, she's just going to get on the bus and we're going to go, watch a baseball game. It was back when the Cardinals were still in Oklahoma City, if anybody knows that. But they were very hesitant and they did not want me to go on this field trip. And what they were afraid of was me getting on a bus. They were afraid that I would get on a bus and that this bus would be pulled over and somehow this bus would be pulled over by ICE and, they would, check the kids for citizenship. And it sounds really bizarre, like just saying it out loud right now to y'all, that ICE would pull over a school bus and check if the kids were, US citizens. But that is a real fear that my parents had 20 years ago. And now that I'm looking around at the current state, I'm like, okay, maybe they were right in having all of these fears. It was that those small instances of why are we not the same as these other families that ingrained that fear and that anxiety and that instability from a pretty young age. So middle school and high school is really when I learned what it really means to be undocumented, because if you remember high school, it's like, you're getting your license and you're getting a job and you're starting to think about college. And all of these things involve a social security number to get an ID, to get a state ID if you want to go to the movies. Because I remember, some movies you had to be 18 or 16 to get into. And if you didn't have a state ID, you weren't not getting into those movies apparently. But I I couldn't get an ID when a lot of my friends could. I couldn't get a license. Getting a job was really hard. There are ways to get a job if you're undocumented, but it's not the same. It's not the same kind of jobs, and they treat you like crap. But made it through middle school, made it through high school. I did have a really difficult time in high school because that's when I was really grappling with the fact that I'd invested so much time in school and now was not sure what I could do, like if I had a future in school, because this was before DACA. And so we weren't, even the teachers did not know what kind of, like what advice to give me, like what to do, what to say. And so again, that added another level of distrust. Like I was looking to my counselors and my teachers, and they didn't know how to help me or what to tell me. But 2012 came around, DACA was announced. And just to get into DACA a little bit, DACA is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, and it is an executive order that was signed by President Obama. And what DACA is, it's a 2-year deportation deferment. So it's not any type of legal status. It's not any path to legal citizenship. It's not gonna, provide me any path to permanent stable citizenship. It's just like a 2-year permit that you can renew for $495 after you've gone through this extensive application process. And it's a promise from the government that they're not going to deport you, and that you can work. They give you a social security number so that you can work and that you have, and that you can get a license. But I say promise because it isn't always held. There have been instances where DACA is canceled and people are deported, or they're deported as soon as their DACA ends, like they're not given that grace of reapplying. So it really is, it's unstable. It's not a permanent solution. And although it was very helpful in that it helped me get a job where I could work in an office, I wasn't having to work minimum wage fast food service job on top of college. So DACA definitely opened up a lot of opportunities, but it isn't a permanent solution. And one problem that we have now is that it's in the process of ending. In 2017, President Trump issued another executive order and tried to end it. And since 2017, I can honestly tell you that it's just been a whirlwind and a roller coaster of emotions and of emotions, because he's tried to end it. It was argued twice before the Supreme Court, and it was finally upheld recently, June 18th is when SCOTUS issued their ruling to uphold it. And honestly, again, I'm not an attorney. I'm not going to get into all the legality and the technical of why it was upheld, why it was challenged, and all that. Oh, and it was upheld again from Maryland a week ago. But what I can say is that all of this back and forth instability has just created anxiety and chronic stress and just instability like no other. It's hard to plan for your future when you don't know what to plan for. You don't know what to expect. With DACA right now, they're supposed to be accepting new orders, but they are not. SCOTUS, the Supreme Court already said that DACA could stay, but the people who have applied, they've already been rejected. And so right now it's kind of this back and forth where SCOTUS is you have to accept them, and DHS is no, we're not going to. And the attorneys that I talk to are what is going on? They don't even know, because they have not seen an agency not follow orders from the Supreme Court before. And to share my personal experience with it, so I have DACA, right? And my DACA expires in November. So I'm supposed to be renewing right now. on their website, one of the forms that that you're supposed to file to renew for DACA expired in May, and they have not renewed this form. So the form that they have on their website is still the expired form. And when I sent in my application, they rejected it because the form was expired. And I used the latest form that they have on their website, but they just haven't updated it. And I guess all of this is to say, like, the instability, the complexity, the chaos, it almost feels like it is on purpose. The purpose is so that you're staying out, so that you are unstable, and that, you know, it's better for you to not be here almost. Because I do definitely daydream of what it would be like, how much easier my life would be in Mexico, where I was just a full citizen. But yeah, I think what I can say is that it's been a really difficult last 4 years since DACA was almost ended, or has been in the process of being killed, I guess. And one thing that has made it additionally difficult, I just saw your question, Mika, I'm sorry, I'll get to that here in a bit. One thing that has made it additionally difficult was when I did try to get help and, you know, see a counselor. I tried to explain to them that deportation and DACA and my legal status was at the top of my mind. Like, that's what was causing my anxiety and all these issues that I had. And I couldn't really explain that to them, because like half of the time I was trying to explain what the immigration process is and trying to give this explanation, when really I should have been talking about, you know, what I was feeling and how I wasn't processing what I was feeling. But that to say, it was difficult to seek help in a clinical setting. I did try a counselor, and it didn't work out for me. I know that there are counselors out there that do amazing work, but that has been an additional challenge, just the lack of awareness. And I mean, it's not their fault. Like, this is incredibly complex, and I still don't fully understand it. I do my best. But Mika asked, how are my parents doing? So one thing that I didn't mention is DACA does not cover parents. DACA is just for the children. And so my parents are undocumented, and they don't know any other way. We don't know any other way. So we make do with what we know. What I can say is that for me personally, I feel a lot of guilt. I feel a lot of guilt having the privilege to use this permit, this 2-year DACA permit, and have access to it when they don't. And really, when they're the ones that made the sacrifice, and they're the ones that have done all the hard work to put me where I'm at, and yet I'm the one that gets to enjoy this privilege of DACA. But they are happy that I have this, and they always get on to me about renewing. So definitely, they appreciate DACA, but I think they appreciate it more than me, because with me, it's a lot of the guilt and a lot of the anger with that DACA isn't the solution that we need or that we deserve.
When people ask you for advice or what they should do, what do you say?
Regarding what? Like with immigration, or?
Erica, could you clarify? How's your brother doing? And she says immigration. You have a brother, right, Jessica?
Yes, I have 2 brothers and a sister. And my 2 younger brother and my younger sister were born in the U.S., so they are U.S. citizens. But me and my second brother, which is kind of closer to my age, we were both born in Mexico. But I was able to apply for DACA in time, and he actually did not apply in time, because once it started to get closed down in 2017, people weren't able to apply, and people got locked out. So like, if you hadn't applied before 2017, you weren't able to apply new. So a lot of people were either locked out because they didn't apply, or they weren't of age yet. So if you're under 16, you couldn't have applied before 2017. And so my little brother was actually locked out because of financial reasons. Like, we didn't have the money to apply for him at that moment. And he also, before then, I mean, we didn't know about immigrant organizations that do this work. But one thing that I didn't mention is that some attorneys charge like $500 up to $1,000 for a DACA application, and that's on top of the $500 that you're paying to USCIS. And that's a big financial ask for a lot of immigrant families. And luckily, I was able to get a scholarship through an organization, but we weren't able to get his on time. And then that happened, and it closed down. But now I know, at least, there are organizations on the ground that are doing amazing work. Two of them, DAOK in Oklahoma City and in Tulsa, and they help immigrant youth fill out their own applications, because these applications aren't hard. And now that I know how to do it, like, I do it all the time, and I renew my own. And it's really empowering to be able to fill out your own application and to stick it to USCIS and be like, I can fill out all of these loopholes and all of this puzzle that you're giving me, because it is hard. And having the opportunity to empower other youth to do that is great. And then they get to empower other youth. So to answer Erica's question, I always point students to those two organizations, DAOK in Tulsa and in Oklahoma City, because in addition to advocating for rights and for our rights, like, it's about empowering our youth and empowering our community to advocate for themselves.
Is somebody asking a question, or is somebody not on mute? Okay. Everyone. I don't think I can. Erica.
Yes, I'm checking to see if there's anybody not on mute.
Okay. There we go. Okay, there we go. That sounds good. Jessica, as you were sharing your story and you were explaining about how your parents were nervous about you.
I ran it, so I thought I'd tell you.
Yeah, she was like, I actually.
Good boy. Okay, there we go. Can you hear me, Jessica?
Yes.
Okay. So when you were telling us your story about how your parents were nervous putting you on the bus because it's getting pulled over, and then you realize as an adult that, you know, it really did make sense for them to have those fears. That reminded me of a time that I had gone out to eat at a Charleston restaurant in Tulsa, and I had a very young hostess, and she was a very pretty girl. And I told her, I said, "You're very pretty." I said, "Where are you from?" And she said, "I'm undocumented." And I kind of, when I went up to the restroom, I said, "Don't tell anyone else that, you know, I know that it's real, you know," and it doesn't seem like she had the same fears and anxieties as you had, but just for her just openly say that, I just said, you know, it's not really a safe time to, you know, say that you're undocumented. So I was like, "You're safe here with me, but, you know, in the future, don't tell anybody that, you know." People just don't take it well. And of course, you know, parents are fearful, and it's just, you know, fearful time. So yeah, when you said that, it was just a very relatable moment. Not in my own experience, but just having empathy for her situation, also you.
And I guess the one thing that I do want to add to that is there's so much shame that comes with being undocumented, and fear, but the shame is just like overwhelming. Growing up, you don't want to tell people that you're undocumented, and it's like a secret. And when people would ask me like, "Where are you from?" like, I could just remember getting like so hot, because I would remember, like, I would think that they're asking me like, "Are you undocumented?" Like, that was a question that I heard when people asked me like, "Where are you from?" Oh. And I know sometimes when people would ask me, "Where are you from?" I'd be like, "Oklahoma City." Like, "Yeah, I was born here," with my thick Mexican accent. Like, "Yeah, I was born in Oklahoma City. This is normal." But it was, again, that fear of like not wanting to say that I was undocumented. But fast forward to when I met all these amazing organizers and youth activists with DAOK, I can say it did become empowering to like just stand up and say like I am undocumented and I am here to stay. But of course that is like with the right spaces. Like I can say that here and I feel very safe doing that. Probably won't go say that you know, I don't know, certain places I definitely wouldn't say that, but I can say that that it is empowering to own your story and to be able to put it out there, and to own that, because for so long we just carried the shame and carried this guilt and this idea that we had to stay in the shadows. So any chance that we find little rays of sunshine where we can, you know, pop out and be like, hey, I am undocumented, like those are rays of sunshine. So the fact that she could say that to you, like that's amazing, because she felt safe in that space. And I'm sure she wouldn't, I hope she wouldn't, you know, maybe go out and say that to other people. But yeah, that's awesome that y'all had that y'all could share that.
Yeah, for sure. Janine asked, are there funds to help with DACA?
Yes. So there's a I don't know what the best way to do, if I should send them to Erica or just drop them in the link. There's national and there's local ways that you could help. Like if you wanted to help at a national level, there's a national fund. And then if you wanted to help DACA recipients here in Tulsa, like I would funnel that to DAOK Tulsa, because we help put those scholarships like directly in the hands of Tulsans, DACA Tulsans who need that. So would that be the best way to send them to Erica, to send those links?
Put them in the group chat here, and also
Oh, yeah.
Erica, because she'll send them out to everyone that's on the call.
Sweet, I will do that. And then someone else said, oh, that's very important. Okay, that was just Erica.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any questions for Jessica? Please feel free to put them in the group chat. But other than that, I'm not seeing anything. But Jessica, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us and being vulnerable in that moment, knowing that you're dealing with some anxieties from things that you have gone through in your past. And I just appreciate you being open and sharing with us. So
no, thank y'all for making this space and for making it easy to share and to be vulnerable. Like I appreciate that. So thank y'all so much.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, Jessica.